Hello, welcome. Thanks everybody who is dialing in to join us this afternoon. I hope that you're having a lovely sunny afternoon enjoying the weather, or if you don't do so well with the heat like me, that you have access to a cool space. Um, so I'm just letting people get dialed in and we shall make a start. My name is Kim Whippy. I am the Enablement Manager at PwC, and I'm really delighted to be here today to host episode 5 of our podcast, Disabling Bias. Before I go any further, we do have captions available for this audio event, and you can access them by selecting the 3 dots at the top of the event panel. Um, and if you go into those 3 dots, you'll find the option to turn on captions, and that will give you live automated captions for this. We will also be recording, we are recording, in fact, this podcast, and it will be available on PwC's YouTube channel shortly after the event today. So if you miss it, or if you want to catch up, or if you want to share it, that will all be possible. So Disabling Bias is our series that gives us the chance to really have a chat, shine a light on really important issues that impact disabled and neurodivergent people and people with long-term conditions in the world of work. And we've been talking about things like non-visible disability, about leadership, and today we're here to talk about the really important topic of digital accessibility. And hopefully in doing so, share some stories, maybe inspire some actions, give some tips for you to take away, whether you're an individual joining or someone coming from an organization who wants to look at this in the work you're doing. And we're really going to be thinking about engagement with accessibility. How do you get others to engage? How do you embed it in what you're doing? How do you kind of build your own learning and share with others? So I'm really delighted to be joined by 2 wonderful guests who I'm going to hand over to actually let themselves introduce themselves, Chris Holloway and Becks Brindley. So Chris, if I start with you, please.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kermit. It's been really exciting actually to see this kind of come together and be part of it today. So thank you. So my name's Chris and I'm one of PwC's digital accessibility managers. I sit in quite a small team actually, but a well-formed team called the Digital Accessibility Team. And our team is solely responsible really for provisioning things like assistive technologies to our staff through the usual workplace adjustments. And obviously for me, most of my role now, which I found is actually probably more focused, more heavily focused, should we say, on kind of upskilling, inspiring others, and obviously looking at ways that we can perhaps influence and obviously advocate for any changes or anything that we want to do around our inclusive tech culture. So for me, it's absolutely one of my favorite jobs I've had. And I think a lot of people agree that when you set out to do digital accessibility, this actually wasn't the role I was expecting to ever land in. It wasn't something that, for me, until I kind of got into that position where I really understood what digital accessibility was, that it actually formed part of my role. So for me now, I'm kind of responsible for things around assistive technology and obviously accessible testing, and obviously the auditing tools. And then obviously for me, it's looking now into kind of how we embed that into the wider teams and also those digital products. So very excited to be here. Just for transparency as well, I have ADHD myself, so I actually really rely on the firm and also my colleagues around me to really support everything I do. So I feel really, really comfortable and really confident with that.
Thanks so much for sharing, Chris, and also in particular kind of offering that personal reflection too. And I know that hopefully in our conversation today, we'll dig into a little bit around kind of the role of working in accessibility. I think it's a really interesting reflection you had around you didn't really expect to get there, but yet here you are, and what would we do without you? So Bex, I'd love to kind of hear a bit more about you and what you do.
Yeah, something quite similar, really. So I head up our very new digital accessibility team across Natwest, supporting our 19 million customers. It's customer facing, so making sure that we have the right processes and practices in place to create accessible digital experiences. And it's formed really around our vision of an accessible bank by design. But kind of to Chris's point here, how did I land here? Through a variety of roles and jobs where accessibility was part of that. It was a thread throughout. And when I've talked to people, they were like, well, you were always going to land up and lead accessibility. It's really clear to us. It wasn't quite as clear to me, but I'm really pleased I've found my way here, and I couldn't be happier to be part of this journey and really to be leading this. I think of myself as someone in tech, and as part of that, I also lead out our Code Club initiatives. That's like helping kids get coding, starting with block coding. So if anyone wants to talk about that, I'm more than happy to get the next generation going in coding. So that's really a bit about me.
Cool. Thanks so much for sharing that, and really good to hear about all the different things that you're involved in as well. I really hope that people do kind of get their ears pricked up by that mention of coding, because definitely an area where there's so many opportunities, and that I think diversifying the people who can kind of get involved in that kind of work is really important. So I guess, yeah, let's get into it. And something that kind of struck me about what you both said, kind of, Chris, you talked about how kind of you're part of a fairly small team, and Bex, you referenced the journey that we're on. And something I was thinking in looking at the topic for today was that although we sometimes think of accessibility in the realm of tech, and a lot of it is to do with technical and kind of access, it touches on all our roles, whether we're producing content or communications or training, or if you work in a kind of modern, say, corporate or public sector organization, you probably have something to do with accessibility, even if you don't necessarily know it. So I am really interested, as individuals, as small teams, how can you go about building some of the knowledge and understanding of the importance of accessibility across an organization? I know, Chris, if I could maybe start with you with that kind of wide question.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think probably one of the things that I get asked very, very regularly is what do I do to become an accessibility manager? What is it that I can do to have that as part of my role? And actually, it's quite an easy thing to kind of respond back to, in the fact that you actually don't need the word accessibility in your role at all. It's about kind of really understanding your impact, really understanding some of the things that you can do that are more inclusive in your day. So, it's looking at perhaps how you can make your day more accessible to you, but also some people around you, even if it isn't actually part of your role. And I think probably one of the things that I've learned is fixing accessibility is definitely not an overnight thing. It's something that for our team specifically, it involves a lot of planning, a lot of persistence, obviously determination, and the usual, a lot of patience, obviously influence to sort of make those changes. And I think for us, we've kind of landed on the best approach for us is around things like introducing bite-sized accessible learning, and obviously showing and demonstrating, explaining what perhaps the impact of an accessibility barrier is on somebody, but also bringing that into perspective on how to fix it or what to do next or your next suggestion. So I think for me, that's kind of where I've sat with this as well. And I think probably the biggest thing,
bringing it to
it is
life.
absolutely. And I think, do you agree, Bex? It's around reinforcing that there's for us never a silly question ever, never a silly question.
So yesterday I had a slide that I'd purposefully made inaccessible, and my team were like, "What have you done? You've gone mad." But it really had an impact because it brought to life what happens for people.
Yeah.
And then straight after that, I gave them a solution. This is what you can do now, and I really ask everyone to do one change and not try and bite off the whole world, not try and do everything, because I think sometimes we can go after perfection, and all I'm looking for is progress. As long as we're making progress every day a little bit better, and I think that's really where we go from. I think the other point which you're sort of alluding to here is that it's not something that you do once a year and then come back to. It has to be a consistent message. So whilst we might use things like Global Accessibility Awareness Day, GAD, to really hone in on and drive content, it's then using that kind of message threaded through everything else. But bite-sized works, right? Everyone's so time poor.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chris, I remember something that you did with us that I actually took part in that I found quite impactful, where we went on that user journey of trying to book a holiday. And I won't call out where we were going to try and do that, but it was an interesting experience, kind of having to navigate with the system kind of in a specific way and realizing actually this hasn't always been set up for me, for my needs in this moment. And I think Becks, you also talked about like the power of storytelling and actually making people realize what the impact of getting it wrong, but also of what the impact of getting it right can mean for people.
Totally.
And I think,
we've done it before. We've used kind of tools to bring up, maybe it's not great, but you get kind of tools that can show or mirror something a bit like dyslexia. So it's like, which for me is really hard. So I'm dyslexic, and then a dyslexic tool comes up, and I'm going, oh, this is impossible to look at. But it really kind of brings to life that maybe that chunk of text is really quite hard for some people to read. And then if you break it up and you do some of these tactics, it can be a bit easier, and you can just see people go, oh, but that's quite easy for me to do, and I hadn't thought about it. And then, you know, and then there's just more changes that they can do. But it's that one point and just letting it sit and land, and people understand it, and not trying to muddy the waters with everything else, because it's such a wide topic, right? There's so much in it, which is what I love.
Agree.
I learn every day.
I think probably as well, what I've come across is obviously going back to that scenario where I've done this session a couple of times. I can't take any credit because it's from the one of the other groups that we're part of, and that was that we just effectively did book a holiday using your keyboard only, and actually standing up in front of the sort of group, and generally people are interested at that point. They want to see what the next steps are, but obviously engaging them in terms of, I asked them where they wanted to go on holiday, how many people they had in their family, and obviously then we looked at potentially booking disability focused support as well. And actually by engaging them that way, what we found was as I started to go through things, the session was for half an hour. We were 45 minutes later and we still hadn't booked a holiday. And obviously then they'd kind of all taken a personal challenge. That was going to be the next thing they wanted to do. But then I didn't realize the next step that they all took from the room was to go and test their own applications. And I think that was, for me, that was kind of that sort of light bulb moment around not everybody gets it straight away. And I think for me, I don't know about you, Becks, but I particularly enjoy seeing people's light bulb moments when they truly understand what we're trying to express around accessibility. Some people get it straight away, and then other people, I'll have them come back in about 2 or 3 months' time, and they've literally just got it. They've just understood what we were talking about, and now they're ready to go. So I think that's kind of my angle on it.
It changes though as well. I had a comment recently, and it said, I've been doing this for a while, and it's just made me rethink everything again. And I think this whole journey for me is just continual, and we think we've got it, and then we learn something new because something else has happened. So I think you're always having those light bulb moments for me, and it's amazing to watch people have them and, you know, be part of their journey. I do agree. It's one of the best parts of the job.
Fantastic. And I think we talk a lot about kind of creating champions and having allies. And I know that sometimes people approach the topic can be a bit worried about getting it wrong or not knowing where to start. But where you do get that engagement and those people actually taking action off the back of that, that's amazing. And I don't know if you have any tips or examples of how you do collaborate internally, both with regard to the experience of colleagues, Chris, and then the experience of customers, Becks.
I think probably from my perspective is a lot of people are worried about getting things wrong, and obviously, you know, coming back and saying, I've got this wrong. Actually, if you got it wrong, it means we're doing the right thing, because it means that actually they're trying, and that for me is huge, because if I've got somebody that's trying and I'm able to then work out where perhaps they need a little bit of upskilling, or perhaps just a 5-minute catch up, just to see, like, why something's doing someone, maybe they've got the wrong color, or something similar, and actually just give them a little bit of guidance. And I think unless they're if they're not coming to me with things that they're doing wrong, or potentially things even they're doing right, and they're just really, really happy to show you that they've learnt something new, and obviously they've made a change, that for me is when I feel that we've really succeeded.
Yeah, it's when the conversation's happening for me. If there's no conversation, that's when I'm most worried, because I think people are too fearful to even have it. So the best way, my top tip there is to, if it's on you, then work out your story and talk that through to help people come to the table and be okay to get it wrong. And often I do that by explaining where I've got it wrong, and where I've had a misstep, and then what's happened afterwards and how I've got it right, or how it's been a journey to eventually maybe getting something right, and I'm still learning. So that would be my kind of top tip. I definitely think it's all about having good conversations and learning. From a customer point of view, you need to respect the person. I think this doesn't matter whether it's a colleague or a customer, we're all people, right? So as long as you are respecting people, and understanding that it's the individual that you're talking to. We have things around things like an inclusive design panel to talk to get different lived experience inputs into feature design. But there's just different ways you can do that, and it's working out how you can fit that into your product life cycle. But the best thing you can do is talk to anyone, talk to a person. And I kind of think of this as, any feedback is better than no feedback. And I know that sort of the research team and sort of statistical significance sort of sitting in my head getting worried, but I think you always glean something from it, and you can always go and look at, well, is that statistically significant, and what does that mean? But talking to people, you learn something every day, you learn something every time, and everyone's different. So
yeah, brilliant. Exactly. And we were talking just a few minutes ago about kind of experiencing barriers and kind of having that moment of impact. But I think just as important, if not more, and something we really, I think, we're trying to build into what we do, is that whole principle of from accessibility advocacy around nothing about us without us. And I don't know, Chris, if there's anything that you could share around how you're working with the kind of the colleague community at PwC, not just to kind of go and share and create champions, but also to understand what matters to them and kind of get that critical feedback.
Yeah, so I mean, I completely agree with that statement. I think obviously nothing about us without us. I think it also means that realistically, we should be in a position where people are part of that journey right from the beginning, rather than waiting to be told at the end. So I think probably for us, from an advocacy perspective, we're a very small team. So for us to be able to go out to every single other team on a constant basis and kind of continually do the rounds is for us, it's just not sustainable. So having those champions or people that are really passionate about something, actually they have the better skills in some of these areas where we're talking about product development. They know their product. I don't know their product. So for them to come in and start to learn accessibility and start to embed that into their design, their life cycles of the products, and reaching out to some of our advocates and having real testers coming in and actually doing some testing is super important. Just a quick one on that as well is that we do have a kind of secondary branch. So we've actually got tech lounge accessibility advocates, which effectively we have kind of tech lounges in our offices which help with IT and technology side of things. And actually we've got advocates in those tech lounges that we've helped upskilling some of the kind of built-in accessibility features, but we've also looked at things like inclusive language, or if somebody comes in and they struggle to stand. Let's take them to a seat. They need to be able to sit down and talk to you in their own time. So for us, it's kind of, we spent a bit of time kind of looking at that advocacy network, and we've had some really positive outcome from that, and actually having people that are on the floor that understand what assistive technologies are there, how to use it, and obviously how to kind of signpost people back into kind of some of the wider processes as well. So yeah, I think for us, advocacy and champions are two things that we're definitely going to continue doing.
Brilliant. And not just kind of supporting them with the knowledge around the tech side of things and what's available to people, but actually in how they engage and interact and give that best possible experience too.
Absolutely.
Awesome. I love that.
Awesome. And I wondered, kind of in relation to that then, whether there's anything kind of maybe, I don't know, it's like the word innovations can sound so big and grand, but is there anything that you've been able to do kind of at PwC, at NatWest, maybe building on feedback, or to kind of bring some of that to life and kind of introduce something new that's kind of gone down well?
God, that's a great question. How long have we got, Kim? No, shall I go first, or Becks, did you want to dive in? It's up to you.
Go
So
on, you go.
I think with this one, obviously, one of the things that we've really noticed is obviously assistive technology, especially through the pandemic. It significantly changed, in the way that the products are developed. The way that things are coming in. There's a lot more AI focused technologies and obviously cloud based stuff. So I think for us, that's always constantly changing. One of the things that we also looked at is the, I'd say, culture temperature. I think it's probably the way I'd explain it is kind of actually, we had more people potentially coming forwards with neurodiverse conditions or dyslexia, ADHD. They're actually looking for these assistive technologies. And for us, it was about really looking and challenging, are we provisioning this software in the correct way? Is there a better way of doing it? Is there a more inclusive way? Or, it's something that we perhaps lower some of the disclosure barriers around some of the software. So we looked at the literacy support softwares that we've got in the firm, identified one that we were quite happy with. It did most of the things that we really wanted it to do, built relationships around it. And actually what we ended up doing towards sort of the end of, would have been the end of last year, we went from, I think it was about 50 to 60 licenses that we provisioned and held on to, up to a firm-wide license that was then available to anybody without the need to disclose any form of disability or requirements, and they could just go ahead and install that software. And for us, just the feedback's just been immense. It was absolutely the right thing to do, and I think for us as well, is it's really opened the doors in our team to go and have those sort of better placed discussions with perhaps people that wouldn't kind of identified themselves for having a neurodiverse condition, or actually they just needed some more help with spelling or grammar, and we've given them access to that. So that's something I'm actually I know our team are particularly proud of as well, because it's actually the first assistive technology that we've made available without any questions across to the whole firm.
I think
it's like the curb cut effect, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You do this right, and everyone benefits, and that's the real thing for me that gets me out of bed, that tech has this massive power, and if we can get it in the hands of people, removing that barrier there, and that's brilliant.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's just such a great example of making this as everyday and as easily accessible. I mean, making the accessible, if you like, because I mean, I'm a user of the software that you're talking about myself, and I never would have thought, oh, I should go and get that. That's what I need. But as soon as I tried it, I realized how helpful it was to me for things like proofreading, and it just removes that cognitive load of a big wall of text. So, yeah, I think it is brilliant to kind of do something that's got a really specific community's needs in mind, and then it benefits them, but also brings everyone else along on that journey too.
Cool.
Yeah, so we found something similar that's rolling out at the moment on our chatbot, known as Cora, and we had a piece of verbatim from a customer who went, I just can't use your chatbot. It's too fast. I'm too slow. And essentially the customer was blaming themselves. And the team listened to the feedback, and it was just really amazing to watch them. They went, no, that's not you, that's us, we'll get that feature in. And so that's now rolling out that customers can increase and decrease the speed at which the chats come through. And what I've found here is that whilst that was very specific to screen readers and the way that was all working together, lots of people were saying to me, no, actually, I have that as well. And they didn't identify in that kind of 1 in 5 bracket. So it was really moving into that kind of per cup side effect here. So I think it's just one of these things where, you know, we focus in on the needs here, and then you get this amazing inclusive tech for everyone. Who wouldn't want a bit of that? Who wouldn't want to be involved?
And it's like doing one change. You know, you made that one improvement, but that's going to have benefited so many. So that, yeah, and I think, wow, I mean, it's really great to hear these examples kind of in practice of the things that can be done, and I think at different scales as well, because certainly this isn't kind of the sole kind of proviso of really large companies, and I think there's things that can go right down to the individual level. And I was just wondering, for anyone who is interested in learning more or thinking, okay, I know this is important, but maybe I'm new to it. Where do I get started? Where do I go? Are there any resources that you found particularly helpful in your own journeys that you think kind of are good ones to go to?
Oh, so we're talking top secret accessibility Batcave stuff now, aren't we? So we're looking at potentially where would I go if I wanted to kind of learn a bit more about assistive tech. So I think probably for me the obvious one, many people would know, probably LinkedIn is going to be my favorite. It's always the one that you can connect directly into people's pockets. You can ask questions, and I've always found that a really friendly place to be. And I think probably for me it's actually going back out to, if you've got your feed correct, so you've got the right people you're following and you're asking the right questions, your LinkedIn feed will start telling you this stuff up front, and you don't need to do much for it. But I think also a really important thing that I've found is actually you need to get yourself out there and start talking to the people that are using this technology and really understand, you know, perhaps you're even using it yourself and it's something that you want to kind of champion in your area, is actually just telling people that that's what you want to do and vocalizing that you want to learn more about accessibility, and, you know, make it a little bit more normal in your day that that's what you're trying to do, rather than kind of secretly try and do it in the basement. So I think for me, it's just be really open and honest if you want to learn about it.
So you're saying get out the Batcave.
Get out the Batcave.
Turn it on. Get out the Batcave. Turn it on, right? So if you've got a phone, you've got access to these features. Your kind of work browsers will be able to turn kind of accessibility features on. Turn them on. Turn up to your next retro and turn it on. Turn the monitor off and make somebody use the feature. You know, use the keyboard and see what happens. That's kind of one way to do it. I think, yeah, LinkedIn's amazing, and this community in particular is so welcoming. So please do reach out to people. They absolutely will support you in your journey. Don't be afraid to do that. I think don't feel that fear. Just go for it. But I would also just think about it in terms of like who when I went through kind of my women in tech work, who do you aspire to be? Who's like, when you watch them, really inspires you? Like, what are they doing? Where are they focusing? Follow them. And can you get a mentor? And can you talk about these things? Don't keep it in the back cave, right? Get out, get a mentor, talk about what you want to do, and ask those questions. And just, you don't have to have accessibility in your title. This is the first time I've had it in my title, and I've been doing it for years.
Brilliant. We are actually really coming near the end of this half an hour podcast. It's absolutely flown past. I did want to ask you both for one final thought, reflection though, and thinking about what a fast-paced area this can be, especially with things coming down the line quite quickly around Gen AI and other similar technologies. What's interesting you and exciting you at the moment? Chris, we'll start with you.
Oh, Gen AI was the one that I was probably, that's going to be the obvious one, isn't it? But I think probably for me, it's actually, and that sounds really boring, but the the progress that we've made on batteries, how well a battery can hold charge and assistive technology can work out in the field, but then also the connectivity piece. So, better 5G that allows, voice dictation software to work better and that sort of thing. So I think for me, it's connectivity and batteries and power.
Brilliant. Becks?
I'm going to take it non-tech as you've done tech, right? So I think the industry is really growing right now. There are more roles in this space. So it's how do we grow the talent? How do we make the pipelines in to accessibility and make it a really inviting career? And how do we lead by example by creating that diversity? For me, that would be the thing I'd add on to kind of Gen AI and the way tech is moving really fast. But yeah, how do we lead? How do we walk that walk? Amazing.
Thank you. Brilliant. So from batteries and connectivity all the way through to careers, there is a lot going on. Thank you so much for giving your time, and thank you to all the listeners for joining us for this half an hour. I hope everyone has found the conversation interesting and that you found little tidbits to take away. Certainly, I was really hearing stuff like, there's never a silly question. Just ask, just try it, just turn it on. Do one change and look for progress, not perfection. And I'm truly convinced if there's one thing I believe, it's that with all the conversations we are having, the more and more of us are getting interested in this and doing this, we can make the change. So thank you very much. I think that brings us to a close. We will be back again with the next episode, November, December time. And in the meantime, you'll be able to find recordings of this episode and all our previous episodes on PwC's YouTube channel in due course. Thank you very much, and I hope everybody has a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks.
Thanks, Kim.